Hi, welcome back, everyone. Welcome to the Anu and Paba show. We've taken a 1 week hiatus, and that's my fault because these darn mosquitoes living in Mount Lavinia.
All the mosquitoes are out to get on.
So I initially thought it was dengue, but it turned out to be chikungunya, which is a lot less dangerous but a lot more painful. Anyway, managed to recover. I'm back. My legs are killing me, but
We have a full episode on your experience later. I think that has to be said.
We'll get into that eventually. But joining us today on the Anu and Paba show is an old friend of mine who I've known for 30 plus years. We used to work together at one of the best international banks this country has seen, which have made an exit recently, HSBC. Dr. Kenneth De Silva. Of course, I knew him as Zil. I still do. And we were all clerks together at HSBC. Then Zil, you ended up going into the forex department.
Correct. Yeah.
And then you decided to do a PhD in economics.
Yes. Ironic.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So why I have Zil joining us, actually Dr. Kenneth De Silva joining us, is because he has a lot of theories about, he's not the biggest fan of the IMF, let me put it that way, or the World Bank for that matter, and rightfully so, because he's been sharing a lot of material with me over the last couple of years as to why that there are so many other solutions for a country like ours to extricate ourselves from whatever financial turmoil we may have found ourselves in. It's not just the IMF and one theory that we have to adhere to. Zil, do tell us where you stand. First of all, why don't you like the IMF that much?
Right. Okay. No, so I'm going down a bit of history of both of us working together. I think when I got into Treasury, I was curious to know how economics really works.
Yeah.
And that was my driving passion, to discover what really makes things tick.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, I didn't have a first degree, so I went to Columbia University and I did a postgraduate diploma in economics. And through that, I went into a master's program at Columbia Economics. At that juncture, I met a very dear friend who is also my mentor, Professor Howard Nicholas.
Okay.
And he had this very engaging chat, and then through that conversation, I ended up at Erasmus University in Netherlands doing another master's in economics development. And that kind of broadened my vision as to how the real economy works. I was pro liberalization, HSBC type of thing.
Of course,
pro markets, pro free market sort of. And with that, I think I realized the folly and also the pitfalls in terms of the overall economic thought process that we had been following since 1965. Now, as a result of that, I went in a slightly deeper, and when I came back to Sri Lanka and I finished my tenure with Citibank here, I thought it was best to engage in a PhD, and as a result of that, I did a PhD at Colombo University, and it was on the microeconomics of firms and how firms' balance sheets translate into the macroeconomy. And as a result of that, you get a better dynamic of understanding where the economic pulse is. And through that, I understood that we have been looking at the economy through the wrong lens. Traditional economics teaches you to look at it from a more consumer individual point of view. But when you flip the coin and you look at it in detail, you find that the consumer economics doesn't really hold forth. It's the firm level economics that really matters. And that as an aggregate is crucial for industrialization and manufacturing, and which Sri Lanka missed. And as a result, when you look back in history and you find the policy thought process from 1965, many people, many academics, very prominent academics have been writing about the policy folly that we made. And the governing doctrine had been the consistent strangulation or the strangular hold on sovereignty and fiscal and monetary policy by the IMF and multilateral agencies particularly. See, since 1965, we have been at the IMF. Now, the IMF, if you go back into the history of the IMF, IMF was never set up for developing countries like
Yeah.
Sri Lanka or Africa, for that matter. It was there for a particular purpose, and that particular purpose was channeled to safeguard the oligarchs and the
Absolutely.
Western interest, which
Yeah.
came as a result of the post-war 1944 era.
Correct.
That gave birth to the Bretton Woods system, and then from that Bretton Woods system, they had this arcane doctrine that they call the Washington Consensus, absolute no consensus
Absolutely.
whatsoever with any
Yeah.
delimitation.
And anyway, Brentwood, that whole gold standard, which was later removed
Yeah.
in the 1970s, so
Yeah.
now it's trust, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's fiat, based on fiat and not on the gold standard.
Yeah.
So central banks can, at any whim or fancy, they can start printing money.
Absolutely.
Particularly, they have the luxury because they are the main source of the world currency,
Absolutely.
unlike other sovereigns. So that is what keeps the US going, and that hegemonic state
Yeah.
has a lifespan. We call that the business cycle.
Okay.
Within the business cycle, generally we find, if you look at historically, all empires have a particular pattern.
Yeah.
I mean, from the Roman
Of
Empire
course.
right down to where we are today. And if even the British Empire, the same story. The British pound was the dominant currency, now it's the US dollar.
Yeah.
So the reserve currency switch happens with the rise of the empires.
Yeah.
And as such, hands changed.
Yeah.
And now we have the dollar from 1920s onwards. We've
Yeah.
got a dominant dollar framework, and global trade, about 70% or 80% of trade was in dollars, but that particular percentage has now declined to about 52%.
Yeah.
It's still declining until such time we find an alternative empire
Yeah.
pick it up. Now, when you come to the alternative, particularly, we are in a very unique position, as all of us are, particularly Asia,
Yeah.
because the alternative is seemingly shifting towards Asia.
Yeah.
And many scholars have written, and I think there is a frame or a terminology that has been used called Asianization,
Yeah.
or the century of Asia, which I think is a great.
I hope it happens.
It is already happening.
Yeah,
It's already happened, and you can't shift it. You can
Yeah.
see. I mean, if you look at all the Asian balance sheets, which I do regularly,
Yeah.
if you look at sovereign balance sheets, the dominant balance sheets are the Asian balance
Yeah.
sheets, sovereign balance sheets,
Yeah.
as opposed to the Britain and US.
Yeah.
They are saddled with huge negative net worth and
Absolutely.
huge amount of borrowings,
Yeah.
whereas Asia is financing these Western countries.
Yeah.
So I call it money flowing upwards, right, from
Not
poor
downwards.
countries
Yeah.
or the
From
relatively
south to north.
to north, the south to the north, which is ironic, but that's happening. So that's
Yeah.
the general sense that I've been talking about.
Yeah.
Not that I'm a anti-IMF
Yeah.
person per se.
I am.
Yeah, that's also fine. Yeah, but I'm a pro Sri Lankan. I think
Yeah.
I like to coin it because people have labeled me as well as you, and because when you start talking about these things, many people get agitated, and
Yeah.
it's not a comfortable topic to be discussed. So maybe your show
Yeah.
probably is one of the shows. That I can talk about.
Absolutely, because I really Kenny, I really wanted to talk about all of the stuff that mainstream media largely ignores for whatever reason. There might be agendas at play, or there might be sponsors who might get upset. We have none of those. I just really want to get to the bottom of it, because why did Sri Lanka go to the IMF first?
Right.
What was the need?
You mean in the recent past, 2021, after COVID,
Yeah.
there was a situation where our external cash flows declined significantly.
Yeah.
It was not an issue particularly from a debt servicing point of view.
Yeah.
We could have managed that.
Yeah.
When I was in some of these key discussion teams that was championing a relief package, sans the IMF, and to move in a direction there where Sri Lanka had more sovereign
Yeah.
capability to manage the economy as per our own aspirations.
Yeah.
But however, that got derailed because there was another group that was also working through the back door to bring in the IMF and put Sri Lanka back on the IMF rails.
Right.
Now remember, when the government changed in 2015, or prior to that, after the Mahinda Rajapaksa era,
Yeah.
then came Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, and
Yeah.
he was pro IMF.
Yeah.
And he took on the IMF and he went with the 17th or 16th program.
Yeah.
or 16 program, right? 17 program.
Yeah.
And
We are currently in the 18th.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are currently in the 17th. Sorry, it was running 16, my
Okay.
mistake, right? 16. So we went in that and we saw the ramifications of that policy. I
Yeah.
mean, from the economy activity, which is GDP indicator, activity declined from about 7% to negative 2%.
Yeah.
Now, when you take that activity spectrum, the activity is a function of the revenue generating mechanism.
Right.
So if that is your larger macro variable, that shows that revenues are declining.
Yeah.
That means people are not generating
Making
enough of money,
Yeah.
right? And that was clearly obvious, and people are struggling, right? So which is part of the IMF overall framework, which is austerity and nothing else. That they,
Yeah.
it's a simple cut and paste doctrine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they use it in Africa, they use it in Latin America.
Absolutely.
They use it in,
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
we'll come to
Yeah.
that, because whether there is a one size fits all
Oh,
is
yes,
another.
yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.